You're watching Building the Franchise with the Jacksonville Jaguars, only on MBL Network.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Building the Franchise with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And on this episode, we're going to cover the next couple weeks of MBL season number 26. But before we do that, we had we had some questions from the comments on the last video. Cortez Logan, aka Heartless, ex-MBL member, said, with Brandon Allen not being the answer, throwing 20 interceptions in the last 6 games, Fournette not being able to stay healthy, the defense ranked 31st in points allowed, and the offensive line leading the MBL in sacks given up, which was 49. What are you guys going to address first in the offseason? So to answer that, I'm kind of going to go through my current roster, and I'll try to answer it as best as I can as we go through there. Obviously, there are 31 other MBL members who watch this show, so I won't be giving my exact off-season strategy away, but I will give away as much as I possibly can, just to kind of keep you guys in the loop and get an idea of some scenarios in which I'm going to be looking at here in the off-season for the first season of Madden 18. So first of all, we're going to look at the quarterback position. Obviously, this is a position that I've stated multiple times in this that we do not have the answer in Jacksonville. Blake Bortles, Colin Kaepernick, and Brandon Allen, none of them are really what we're looking for the future of the franchise. With our current record sitting at very few wins, I don't want to give anything away from this episode, but the current record is not very good, and we are looking at a very high draft pick. So there's a couple different ways we may go in the offseason with this. Depending on who is there during free agency, we may bring in a veteran as well as draft a quarterback in the draft to let the rookie sit for 1 year and develop before throwing him to the Wolves while we work on our offensive line as well. The other way we may go is if there's really nobody in free agency who we would like to bring to Jacksonville, we may just draft a high-rated quarterback and get some offensive line during the free agency. So that's kind of the two different ways we're looking at the quarterback position. For the halfbacks, obviously Leonard Fournette is somebody who we are extremely excited about if he could only stay on the field. As Banana said in the last video in the comments, he did say, what's the plan to draft a quarterback and pray for Fournette? I made sure to let him know that hashtag pray for Fournette is already in full swing here in Jacksonville. But we do like this Corey Grant guy here. This Corey Grant, he is a younger guy who we're still working on. Obviously, he's not Leonard Fournette, but he's been a little more durable. Chris Ivory and Yeldon, not sure they're going to make the squad come next season. That will all come down to contracts and what is worth cutting them or not cutting them, as well as cap penalties and things like that. So necessarily drafting a running back, no. We will not be drafting a running back unless it's a later round running back, just kind of for some depth. For the fullback position, we're not going to be looking to draft or get a fullback in the free agency. We like Williams. He's just obviously a rookie and needs to continue to develop. For wide receivers, obviously our key here is Allen Robinson. He is our star wide receiver. We have re-signed him for multiple years. I believe it was a 5-year deal, so he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Allen Hurns is still under contract. Marquise Lee, we recently re-signed. Dede Westbrook is a rookie. Rashad Green Jr. is young as well. I believe he's in his 2nd season. And Listenby was just picked up during free agency, so his contract will end. There's actually not really any desire to draft a wide receiver unless somebody's sitting there just for some depth once again. I'm pretty confident in our wide receiver and running back group as long as Fournette could stay healthy. So we won't be looking necessarily there for the draft, more so offensive line and quarterback, as well as defensive line, which we'll get into in a few minutes. For our tight end, Mercedes Lewis, obviously he is 33 years old. He is an older gentleman who will no longer be in the league will not be in the league for much longer. We do have to look at getting his replacement because the 2 tight ends we have behind him are not necessarily route runners and pass catchers. So yeah, some work to do there, possibly in the draft or free agency, depending on who is there. At left tackle, Cam Robinson is a rookie. He is plagued with injuries just like Fournette. He's been out for a good majority of this season. So luckily we do have Genesee, I believe is how you say his name, behind him, and he's a young guy as well. So both of them have developed throughout this season and will continue to develop. Not necessarily a need for us. Left guard, both of those guys are getting up there a little bit in age. They're going to start to decline. So we'll look to probably shore up that position in the very near future, if not this season, the season after. At center, we're pretty good there. He's our best offensive lineman. It wouldn't hurt to get some depth behind him, but with our injuries to Fournette, we had to cut the backup for him in order to bring in a running back earlier in the season. So moving on to right guard, we have two younger guys once again who just aren't necessarily developed and haven't necessarily proven themselves. Again, offensive line is going to be an extremely big focus for the offseason, both for free agency and for the draft, depending on who is sitting there in each of those phases. On the defensive line, Dante Fowler Jr., he has had a couple injuries this season, none of them necessarily long-term. He had, I believe it was a 2-week injury and then a 3-week injury spread out. They weren't back-to-back, so we are comfortable at the left end position. We also have this guy, which I'm not even going to remotely try to say his name. Not happening. So yeah, but left end we're pretty good. Phillips, again, another young guy. Not necessarily worried about left end. For the right end, Calais Campbell, obviously 31 years old. He is our best defensive lineman, best front seven defender. However, he has been injured for most of the season as well, and Smoot has taken his spot and not necessarily been terrible. So we're going to look to continue to develop him and draft the future Calais Campbell. At defensive tackle, once again, it's young players. The majority of this Jaguars team is young players, so we are lucky there. We're not going to make too many drastic cuts as we move onto this first season here. Mostly we're just going to look to continue to build and develop through free agency and the draft. So defensive tackle, we have, again, they're younger guys. They're just not developed yet. We may bring in one big name guy for the defensive tackle position while we continue to develop the younger defensive tackles. Left outside linebacker, Miles Jack. Love Miles Jack. He has Fournette-itis. He cannot stay on the field either. So I believe he's had 5 injuries this season, all a week or two, and missed the majority of the year. Blair Brown has taken his spot and not necessarily been terrible. However, he is not very good in pass coverage. So yes, he's fast. Yes, he can hit, but that's about it. he's not a coverage linebacker, so not necessarily good when our offensive line or our defensive line can't get past the opposing offensive line and get to the quarterback to cause pressure. Middle linebacker Pozlesny is an older gentleman as well. He will soon be leaving. He is actually on his contract here, and it has been extremely fun to try to re-sign him as we went along here. He is not necessarily wanting to be in Jacksonville, so he may or may not be here. Continue to look forward to that as we go. Telvin Smith for the right outside linebacker. He is obviously one of the future players that we want to continue to develop here. He is a 26-year-old who has recently been re-signed, so he is staying. McCray is his backup, and Smith has gone out a couple times. I think it was twice for the rest of the game injuries, and his backup's done pretty well, so not necessarily worried about that. For this current offseason, at cornerback, Boye, Ramsey, Flowers. Flowers is a free agency pickup who obviously only has a 1-year deal. We just brought him in for depth, not necessarily the future there. We are excited about Colvin and Myrick, though. Both of those guys have been developed as the season went on, so we're going to continue to develop them and draft or get some more, 1 or 2 more in free agency cornerbacks and see what we can do. We also have, I believe it's 2 cornerbacks on our practice squad who will continue to look forward to bringing them back onto the team and working them in the rotation as needed. Cornerback, not a huge focus for us for the offseason. Grant, though. Grant is another guy that is we're pretty excited about. He's pretty fast. He's still young, so he's still developing as well. Tashawn Gibson, 27 years old, free safety. At the free safety position, we're good for a couple more years. And Tashawn Gibson has not really done us wrong. I believe he has 7 forced fumbles so far on the season, so he's doing his job. He's not terrible in pass coverage, so it's not a big focus this first offseason. Strong safety, Barry Church. Again, pretty decent at what we need right now. not our major focus. Our major focus is moving forward this offseason, just to kind of recap, are going to be quarterback, offensive line, some defensive line, mostly the defensive tackle, just bringing a big name guy that's strong and can actually stop the run, because we've let everybody in the league run all over us this whole year. So that's going to be our main focuses moving forward onto this offseason. So let's go ahead and jump into this first game of this episode, which is going to be the Week 11 matchup against the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are currently second in the AFC North behind the Steelers, who are undefeated coming into this. The Steelers undefeated coming into this game. So the Browns have some work to do to win their division from Lip, who pretty much has ran the AFC North forever. So yes, they can be beaten. Yes, they have a rookie quarterback, Deshaun Kaiser. He is not necessarily the greatest, but again, he's a younger guy who can continue to develop, and he's actually not played terrible this season. So kind of like we were talking about there whenever I was going over the roster, we've pretty much let everyone run all over us this season, and it's kind of a good thing that the roster recap and looking forward to the offseason was before this game, because Crowell pretty much done whatever he wanted. He had 12 attempts for 233 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Browns seen an opportunity to run the ball, and we couldn't stop it, and they just kept doing it and doing it and doing it, and there was nothing we could do. However, we did keep the rookie Deshaun Kaiser to 50% completions. He only had 8 attempts, so it was 4 of 8 for 29 yards, which is an excellent defensive game for the corners and safeties, except for the fact that they couldn't take Crowell down whenever he made it to the secondary. So yeah, again, huge focus this offseason is going to be figuring out a defensive tackle who can actually stop the run, because our current situation, we do not have one. And play calling, I'm not going to say it's all the defensive tackle's fault, obviously. Part of it's play calling and me still getting used to this new Madden 18. So yeah, moving on. We're gonna go past this game. I don't want to look at Crowell run for any more yards. Players of the game, we had halfback Corey Grant, 14 carries, 76 yards for offense, and Dante Fowler, 3 tackles and 3 sacks on the defensive side of the ball. For our Week 12 matchup, we took on the Arizona Cardinals, who are coming into this game at 4-6. Not much better of a record than ours, but considering we only have one win on the season, they're definitely the better team coming into this. Some of the key players we have to look out for in this game, obviously the running back, because we can't stop the run. So Kerwin Williams, he's leading the team currently coming into this game for rushes or for attempts and for yards. So we're going to continue to try to stop the run, as much as that has not worked so far this season. And John Brown on defense. John Brown comes into this game leading the team in receptions and yards and touchdowns. So we're going to try to make sure we shut him down as well with our secondary. So this game here against the Arizona Cardinals was one of those that kind of could have went both ways at the beginning, and then momentum started swinging in our favor. Our defense started getting some stops and getting some turnovers from their offense there. And we, for the most part, were stopping the run. We did have this blocked kick, which you're looking at right now, returned back for a touchdown. So that was pretty nice. But we pretty much shut down Carson Palmer. He only had 106 passing yards. They didn't even play Williams at run. They played David Johnson. I believe he was injured is why Williams was leading the team. I'm not a Cardinals fan. Could care less about the Cardinals, so don't quote me on that. Could be completely wrong. But he must have been injured or something. But Johnson came in, 19 attempts for 130 yards. Again, not what we're wanting to happen. Side note, they blocked a field goal of ours too. But yeah, so we wanted to stop the run game, and we weren't necessarily able to do that. We didn't give up 233 yards, which, I mean, if you're looking at it that way, that's positive. So it was only 130. Could have been worse, but it wasn't Crowell. So had it been Crowell again, it probably would have been 350, the way our defense has been playing. But no, our secondary kept us in the game for the most part. Our offense pretty much threw us out of the game. Brandon Allen threw 4 interceptions and had 1 rushing touchdown, which was kind of different. So it was neat to kind of see him get out of the pocket there. The Cardinals did hold on to win this game 24-14. However, For our players of the game, we had Allen Robinson, 8 receptions for 196 yards, by far the leading receiver in that game. And Jalen Ramsey, 2 tackles and 2 interceptions. He now, as you just seen, has 8 interceptions and is tied for second place behind the Colts' Malik Hooker, who we play in our Week 13 matchup here. Week 13, there are no highlights for. However, I will give you some stats and information from the game. Unfortunately, I was not able to get highlights from this game. It's Todd's fault, so ask him why I couldn't get highlights. But some of the stats from this game, we'll go Colts first. Andrew Luck, 11 of 21 for 145 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Frank Gore, 23 attempts, 103 yards for running the ball, obviously better than we've been doing. We barely let him eclipse 100. Philip Dorsett on their team, 3 receptions, 19 yards and a touchdowns. T.Y. Hilton led the team in yards, 2 receptions for 59 yards. And on the defensive side of the ball, they didn't do too terrible much. They did not get any interceptions. They did have 2 forced fumbles, though. For us, for the Jaguars, we had Brandon Allen had an excellent game, 17 of 20 for 206 and 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately, he went down with a torn hamstring, so he is out for the remainder of the season. Enter Colin Kaepernick for the remainder of the season, barring injury. Once again, injuries have been fun so far this Madden. So Colin Kaepernick is going to be the starter for the remainder of the season. Grant did have 20 attempts for 63 yards and a touchdown, and Mizell, who was the young guy who we picked up a few weeks ago off of a practice squad, 2 attempts for 66 yards and a touchdown. Receiving, we had Allen Robinson, 6 receptions, leading the team in receptions for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns. And right behind him, Allen Hurns with 5 receptions for 47 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, we had Colvin got 1 sack. He had 5 tackles. Dante Fowler only had 1 tackle. It was a down game for him. Telvin Smith, 2 tackles and an interception. Barry Church, 3 tackles and an interception. And Calais Campbell had a sack as well as 5 tackles. For our players of the game, I just went over Brandon Allen's stats. He got the offensive side, and Aaron Colvin, again, just went over his stats as well. He had 5 tackles and 1 sack for the defensive player of the game. And we did win this game 29-21 against the Colts, so we now have 2 wins on the season. And yeah, again, not necessarily the best record at all, but a second win definitely felt good, especially against a division rival. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys. I know it necessarily wasn't what you were used to seeing as far as highlights and stuff, but we did cover a lot of looking forward things with the roster and looking into this current or this upcoming offseason. So it ran a little longer than they're going to be running normally on Tuesdays. Just going over the roster took some time and pretty much took as long as a normal episode would. So as always, guys, make sure you leave some comments down in the comments section down below and let me know anything else that you want to see, any questions that you have. I think I've answered every comment so far on the past couple videos, so I'll answer you in there or I'll answer you on the next episode. But yeah, make sure you're leaving comments and let me know if there's anything else that you want to see. If you want to see stats or you want to see the actual depth chart, anything like that, make sure you're letting me know so that I know what to put in for the next episode besides the normal highlights and stuff. As we get more into this off season, there will be probably more frequent episodes. I'm going to try to do an episode per stage just to try to keep you guys caught up and let you guys help me make some decisions on who to bring in and stuff like that. So look forward to that as we close out season number 26 here. And as always, make sure you're checking out the Detroit Lions building the franchise. Bomber's doing an excellent job over there. He recently changed his format. He's got a nice new shorter format as well now. So make sure you're checking out that series as well. And any and all of our live games. If you haven't watched a live game yet, you don't know what you're missing. They're generally exciting. This season, there's not necessarily been that many close games, but there's been some fun games to watch, and the commentary is like no other in another league. There's nobody else that has commentary like the MBL Network, so make sure you're checking those out. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday.